First off, I want to say that you guys are the most popular guests on here. The two you've done have actually ranked the highest.
Just because I keep listening to it over and over again.
Hey, you don't have to say that. Come on, let the win be a win. So yesterday's webinar went really well.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Do you want to just do a quick little overview of everything you touched on?
Of what we talked about?
Yeah, and then we can kind of dig in from there.
Well, so the whole kind of beginning of that webinar was we were getting questions from our clients because there's a lot of confusion. Like, what do I do? Like, I know we need to implement AI somehow, somewhere.
A lot of pressure, yeah.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, my CEO called. We need to do AI, right?
Yeah.
And so where do you start and how do you do it?
Right.
And that was really and so we said, and what we're finding is the real conversations, the conversations with our clients that take traction are the ones that they get where it's small projects. It's this is a pain for us. And so we'll go out and we'll write a language model around a couple of spreadsheets from hell.
Yeah.
And then they can query those spreadsheets and get the returns they want. And it's a great application. It doesn't cost a whole lot of money. I think everyone's asking, what can AI do?
Yeah, well, or they've got ideas of what they think it is and what they think it can do, but there's just they're not getting, you mentioned traction, they're not getting any traction. They're not getting started on anything, so they're not doing anything because there's too much that it could do, or, should I have it driving my company cars or vacuuming my floors? Where's the line here?
I want to dump all of my data into a data lake and have AI do everything and run my business.
And suddenly improve my bottom line by 40% because I did that or something. And it's not going to happen that way. And so, getting those discrete use cases, those multiply. So, that's what I think is interesting is, you get those first couple and, more people come up with more ideas. And the next thing you know, you've got all kinds of AI that you're doing, all sorts of different things.
And some of it's pre-built, like Copilot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Some of it's, we talked about that in the webinar, how we created the presentation.
Right.
We used 3 or 4 different AI products to make that presentation. And it started with recording the transcript.
Right.
Then it was putting it into ResolveIQ to create the document. And then it was Copilot again to create the PowerPoint from the document.
Yeah.
Right.
And we used Grok to do some research on some of the deeper stuff, the new deep search.
Yeah.
Grok 3. Yeah.
And then Tom put a background on there and we couldn't figure out how to get the background off. And
Yeah. So that was Copilot also. So Copilot added a colored background, but it didn't use slide masters. So made it practically impossible to update the slide deck. So that was useless.
When you create a PowerPoint and through AI, does it do the slide master typically?
It didn't that time.
No, it's usually just a white background, and then you can use Designer.
Which is now part of Copilot.
Yeah, you can use Designer to do the backgrounds and stuff like that. But it wasn't 2W branded background. So
Right. Okay.
Sue would have yelled at us. And most of my motivation in my life is to make sure that Sue doesn't yell at me. So
Yeah, make her happy.
yeah.
Is there a way to incorporate your brand elements into Copilot for PowerPoints?
I don't think so.
So there's a thing in SharePoint and in Copilot where you're setting up your brand library or your brand. Oh, I can't think of the name of the terminology.
Stuff, right?
Yeah, where you can put your fonts, your colors, your logos, things like that in there, and those become available. But I think Microsoft is really in the early stages of making that common. But there is now a common storage setup, or like a location where you put that in the admin center.
And then it flows through all the 365
Yeah,
stuff.
so that stuff starts to show up. But again, right now it seems hit and miss where it's showing up. I expect over the next 8-12 months we'll see more of that.
Yeah.
Because that's actually a really important point, right now with Copilot is that, everyone's kind of in their own little silo doing their thing. So they're not getting that the advantage of, company-wide templates, company-wide branding, things like that.
Well, if I was to, my own experience with Copilot, it's great. It does a lot of really good time-saving things, but I wish it could respond in my own voice, my tone, the way I write. If I'm responding to an email and I click the Copilot thing and I say, I give it the 4 words that I want to reply, and it creates the paragraph, it's clearly I did not write that.
Yeah.
Because first of all, it starts with, I hope you're having a fantastic day.
Right.
And I usually don't say that.
Yeah. You said exclamation points. You typically don't
I'm
use,
not really an exclamation point guy.
Yeah. That's fair.
We're doing things like in ResolveIQ, our AI, we have user-specific context. So every user has got a context that we can default or that we can configure. So, my context, it knows who I am. It knows what my job title is. It knows my direct reports. It knows all the stuff from Microsoft Graph, things like that, that Copilot does. But it also has got my tone of voice.
Right.
Well, and it knows 2W. It knows our business. It knows what we do.
Yeah.
Right. So it's more specific to 2W, and as it would be our clients if they were to use ResolveIQ.
And the reasoning models like Grok that are really employing reasoning, especially with that deep search capability, those are interesting too, even though they don't have business specific information sort of pre-baked in or pre-grounded in them. They're going out and grabbing like our public website, our LinkedIn, our Zoom info, that type of thing, and coming back with some really good knowledge about our company and our products and our services and things like that, and incorporating that.
I have been very, very impressed with the deep search piece of Grok.
Yeah.
Grok's the X, Twitter.
Oh, right.
X. That is their AI product. And
that's a chat bot?
Kind of. It's like a Chat GPT type thing, but it's so much more powerful. It's up to date. It's grounded in not only the internet, apparently everything else, but also X, all the stuff that's going on there. And it's really, really impressive.
Yeah, I haven't played with that one yet, actually.
Yeah, it's also super handy if you're in X and you're on a post and you don't quite understand what they're talking about, or you want to know more about the subject or whatever. Every post has got a Grok icon there you can click on, and it will give you a deep understanding and context about whatever that thing is. Everything from a meme that I didn't understand to some current piece of news or politics or whatever.
There's and that's version 3 beta. That's relatively new.
Yeah.
That'd be really interesting on LinkedIn, actually.
Yeah.
Like if there's content about a specific solution, it could pull more around it.
Like, what are they talking about here?
Yeah. Okay, so to steer us back in, because that was a little tangent.
It's what we do best.
Yes. So you split the use cases into 2 big buckets yesterday when talking about them. Do you want to touch on those a little bit?
So we talked about summarization or information summarization, which is a lot of what we've been chatting about here. Really taking, summarize this email, or take the meeting transcript and summarize it and give me the talking points and the follow-up tasks or actions, or it might be, aggregate the last 6 months sales and tell me who my, sales leaders are and who I should be working with or whatever. A lot of that is summarizing and aggregating type things. So much more language interactive. That's one of the buckets that we tend to put things into. They're not clearly defined buckets, but that's definitely one that we put things in. And then the other one is task automation. You hear robotic process automation, you hear task automation, you hear agents. There's lots of different terms for those. And those, are everything from, my Amazon device starting the robot to vacuum the floor when I leave would be sort of an example of that. It's like I noticed it looked like no one was home, so I turned on the vacuum. There's no real language interaction going on there. It's more task automation. Or when we handle ticket routing for an incoming service ticket, and those are automatically routed to the appropriate group within the company, and they're categorized, and the next steps are added to the ticket and things like that. Those are all more task automation.
Yeah, I tell you, a really simple, useful AI project would be you have your catch-all info at email box. And you get all kinds of stuff in there. You get everything from spam to solicitations to customer inquiries and across the board. And we could have AI read that, decide who it needs to go to, send it away, or delete it.
Yeah.
This looks like spam. I'm just going to make it go away.
Actually, ResolveIQ handles that process for all the incoming mail to our help desk. And it's kind of fun because it will playfully respond back to spammers and scammers. So that's kind of fun. But internally, it's handling the routing to dispatch or elsewhere.
Yeah, and it's those little projects that I think you get those quick wins. They're not super expensive. You can, it doesn't make your head explode. And then you start to stack some of those together. And they tend to fall into one of those two categories typically. It's either you're summarizing a bunch of information. I've got a whole bunch of sales sheets for my salespeople, and we put them in the language model and so they can query them. And, here's what my customer is looking for. What is the best product for that versus flipping through 1,000 PDFs. Right. I mean, what a great application that is. And like I said, it's not super expensive and it's not super onerous to roll out.
Yeah. I had an idea that popped in my head when I was watching the webinar, actually, and I wanted to pick your brains on. Because you're talking about PDFs and documents and how it can kind of swift through all of those and give you relevant information based on what you're asking. Could companies use it to clean up their files? Like if a file is 10 years old and it hasn't been opened in 6 years or something, could it erase it to keep SharePoint or OneDrive clean?
I mean, there's a tool. I mean, Purview does that,
Purview.
right?
I mean, Purview and data tagging and lots of data governance tools out there do that type of thing. And we use them for that for sure. You could use AI to make the determination about the type of document. You might, I don't know if you're a medical equipment manufacturer, you might decide that we have an obligation to keep documents for 7 years or 10 years, or I don't even know what the particulars are around that. But we don't want to keep it a day longer than we need to, for instance. So you might have AI that's doing some document categorization and tagging, saying, okay, these are the types of documents that rule applies to, and then it would come along and the normal tools then would use the categorization to do the cleanup after 10 years or whatever the timelines are.
Okay.
So that might be a combination of more traditional data governance tools along with some AI for categorization.
Now, what you could do, though, is you can use AI to aggregate a whole bunch of your data to create your own process documentation. So how do I enter an order in Epicor, say, if it's outside the norm, or what is my, how do I deal with this particular situation?
Yeah.
Right? We ground it in enough of the company data, we can actually create the process document itself, and then we feed that back in, and then you can now query the process.
Yeah. I mean, we use that here, so I've definitely had experience with that. So more use cases, because I know that use cases are what kind of like light the light bulb above people's heads, like how does it work for me?
One that we use a lot that we talked a little bit about, security. So there are a number of security products out there. There's Copilot for security, so that's the Microsoft iteration of Copilot that's specific to security and security researchers. And then there's also one of the things that we do as security alerts come in for a particular device. We use AI to evaluate those alerts, and if they reach a certain threshold or various sets of dynamically sort of AI-determined guidance, we'll disconnect that device from the network, or we'll isolate it from the network, except for our ability to remote to it to diagnose it. And the same with users. So if I've got a user like a Defender for Identity issue going on, where the AI is determined that these alerts or these notices or these notifications coming in rise to the level of where we should maybe cut this user off until someone can talk to them, we'll do that. So if someone were downloading a bunch of confidential company documents to a local device, for instance, that might be a Defender event or a data governance event that would rise to the occasion of, hey, let's disconnect this user until somebody can talk to them or talk to their manager and make sure that there's not an issue here. And we use those internally as well as some of our clients.
Yeah, I think one of the things with AI is, and this made me think of it, is people are overthinking it to the fact where like the problem was there before but they're not thinking about the problem. They're thinking about what AI can do.
I think you're exactly right. They're looking at what AI can do as opposed to what am I trying to accomplish in my business and where are my problems, my pain points, right? So I tell you, one of the nifty uses of AI that is also not super difficult to implement is sentiment. Right. So we can have AI read emails, inbound chats, tickets, whatever it happens to be. And we can have AI say, you know what? I think this customer is getting a little irritated, and flag it. And we do that here. We have it read all the tickets. And if it looks like there's some frustration building on there, it flags it. And we go, okay, well, you know what? I think we may be creating a frustrating situation. We better get out in front of it, right? What a great application for artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and it can then send a reply back if we wanted it to, right?
Sure, yeah. It could reply back. It could escalate it to, the particular person. Here, what happens is if it senses that there's an irritation, that the sentiment is low, we'll actually route it to their success manager.
Okay,
Says, hey, you need to get out in front of this.
Right.
Based on what's going on with the ticket and the interaction with a client, we might route it to a Teams channel where there are people who watch to see what's going on there. We might respond directly back to the client. If it looks like just kind of a summary of what's next or what's going on or what the timeline is or something like that, looks like it might address the immediate concern or at least provide some information sometimes. We do that. We do that a lot. Those are pretty frequent, where ResolveIQ will, you might have a ticket that's gone on for months of, some kind of a complex customization that's going on in Epicor or something. And, somebody might just want to know, hey, what's the next steps here? And it's able to go back and go through those, maybe hundreds of emails back and forth about that issue or that customization, handfuls of files and attachments and screen captures and all of that, and, take it all and put it into a nice couple of paragraphs of, hey, here's how we started, here's what we're doing, here's, who's been working on it, here's what's next, and when you can expect something. And, the feedback we've received has been extremely positive to those automated messages.
So, and I tell you, here's a really interesting application I think that's up your alley is brand monitoring.
Yeah.
So we can go out there and we can have it monitor reviews, product reviews. So if you're selling something on a website like Amazon, for example, where you get stars, we can monitor that. We can monitor for negative comments. We can monitor for positive comments. We can monitor just all the social media for good and bad. That's a really interesting application for AI.
And being able to keep language consistent across, because marketing department can keep language consistent, but if you go outside of that, like communication in general should be consistent. And
as you know, it's almost impossible.
Yeah. Right. But our solution ResolveIQ helps do that. So I challenge, because I know the main message for the webinar and what the main message is today is to start small. So do you have anything even smaller than the examples we gave that someone could do today? Well, not get done today maybe, but start thinking
like what's
about.
the smallest?
Yeah, the smallest AI implementation
application that we could do. If you've got a spreadsheet that has a bunch of information on it, that you're constantly trying to find stuff, look up stuff, this is a great application for that. And then I can start to say, hey, well, what is, and then query it to pull the information out versus going all the way over to column AAAF.
Yep.
And line, 1333. That's a pretty nice, easy application that we can get done pretty quickly for somebody.
Yeah.
And it's just one spreadsheet, right? It's not all or nothing. You don't have to do all your data or whatever.
You just pick one spreadsheet and, whatever the most complicated spreadsheet is, that would be a way to go, right?
Start to pull useful data out of there and, and sometimes useful insights. So I would also say, so there's start small for sure. We talked about a lot in the webinar, but there's also start.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the big part there. Get some data into a SharePoint library and enable a Copilot agent on that SharePoint library. Be able to generate Q&A or generate information from that library that way. so a tool that's dedicated and designed and, say professionally grounded in that data, like ResolveIQ, would do a better job than a sort of a generic Swiss Army tool. But try it out. Or a big one, if you're someone out there who does coding of any kind, get into GitHub and GitHub Copilot. The majority of all code being checked into GitHub today is AI generated. So if you're not using AI to generate your code, you're probably taking too much time, possibly making errors, leaving security issues, things like that.
I was working on something and I had to get into the HTML code. And I took the HTML code and it wasn't quite coming out the way that I wanted it to. So I took it and I stuck it in AI. In this case, I used Grok because it was even newer and I was all fascinated on what would come out. And I said, hey, clean this up for me. And it cleaned it up. It was much thinner code. There was way less actual code there. And it did exactly what I was hoping it would do.
Yeah.
And I took it and I pasted it into the project I was working on. And the results were exactly what I needed it to be.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So those are, simple standalone type things that, that you can be doing but start. If you're not doing something, get together a plan, figure out, find a use case.
Look for the inefficiencies. We can find, we talk about this pretty regularly, but what we did in our billing process and how we used it to QA the billing process so that it only presented, a handful of abnormal situations to the billing people as opposed to having to touch all 230 invoices that we send out every week or whatever.
Right.
And that has been huge. I mean, that literally took that process down from a day and a half to about 20 minutes. We were just literally in a meeting this morning. We are rolling out a new web bot for 2wtech.com.
To take, on our website.
Yeah. And so it's going to have the same web body stuff that's there, right? But we're also going to give it a end user experience based upon who the user is. So we'll ask our clients to log in. They can query their tickets. The bot will be grounded in all the information that's on the 2WTech website. Thing that people don't know, they go to the website on occasion or whatever, right? But what they don't know is there is over 10 years of blog posts there. I mean, Sue has been writing blog posts nearly every day for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to take all of that information. We're going to ground that into a web bot. And we're going to have, it's going to be ResolveIQ. So it'll be, our little ResolveIQ guy.
Yep.
And they will be able to query not only what's on the website, but also what's going on with the work that we're doing with them once they log in.
Yeah. So will it kind of bring their portal to the front of the page versus having to go
it'll be more of a return. It won't be the client portal, but it'll be more, we probably could, but it'll be more of a return of queries. Through the web bot.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be huge.
Yeah.
I've always thought about ways because we don't have a good way to filter through our blog posts. So all the outdated ones get lost in the 50th page or something.
Yeah.
I think our page goes up to 136 pages of blogs right now.
That would seem,
and I'm sure it just tapped out. I'm sure we even blogged more than that.
Yeah. No, there's a ton of information there. There's a ton of information on our YouTube channel. Right. So, you want to know about AI? How many videos we got on the YouTube channel about AI, right?
Yeah.
Going back, what was the one? Our first webinar was a year and a half ago.
There are now a number of AI models out there that are designed to process video.
Okay.
So they're working, they would work directly from the video. Those are, I don't want to say quirkier, but they're not as readily easy to use necessarily, but a lot of content creator types, you're for sure going to be using those. The designer Copilot, that product is kind of in the other direction, but it'll take a prompt and turn it into a 2-minute video.
Yeah, you sent me one of those. Yeah, that's
some of them are a lot of fun, and some of them it's getting pretty good. Take the Adobe suite, for instance, the Adobe Creative Suite. there's a ton, and Adobe's always been a leader in AI, in image generation and content creation. And there's a ton of AI capabilities in those tools. Teams, you can train teams now on your voice. And I was demonstrating this to someone this morning that I have teams trained on my voice. So if I'm on a call and talking and someone else comes into my office, even if they're standing right next to me talking, Teams completely removes their voice because I've got it set to audio isolation and it's fixed on my voice. So the people on the other end only hear me, even if someone's literally right next to me talking at the exact same volume that I am.
Right.
Which is pretty crazy.
So I have to ask, and I'm watching time and we're coming close, but I have to ask because of the last podcast we did, you guys gave a little thought behind where you think AI is going to be. And I don't know if you remember what you said, but has anything changed since then? And that was 6 months ago, maybe at this point?
When we did the webinar, we pulled up a screenshot of our very first AI webinar, and all of the stuff in that webinar came true. And is everything that we did. So we're either really good at following direction or we're brilliant, or probably the first one. So where is AI going?
Yeah, if anything's changed since the last time you predicted it.
I think reality has set in to AI. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the things that we've been hearing and reading and seeing is that pilots have been successful mostly for people, or in some cases exceeded their expectations, but there's that gap between piloting and going live with something. So I think a lot of projects are hitting that. It's harder to go to production with something than
think like any technology or tool. It's once you get past the cool factor, it turns into the treadmill that you got for Christmas that is now used for drying your sweaters.
Yeah.
Right. And it's and so I think that kind of that reality of it's, first of all, I don't think it's near as scary. It's not going to rule the world. Now, if you really get into it, it still is kind of scary. But I think from just a usability standpoint, I think people are understanding that it is a tool. That you do have to know how it works. It's not magic, right? It depends on how you prompt it. It depends on how you ground it. Copilot, just because you bought Copilot for $35 a user doesn't mean that it's going to do anything for you.
Right.
And so I think some of that's really starting to become kind of the reality is setting in, which is why we're messaging small wins.
Trying to answer your question, Daniel. I mean, 2 years ago when we talked about this, we said things like data security, data governance are going to be the Achilles heel for people, and they are. So we were on about that. I think one of the things that's surprising me is the content creation part. Actually, that's an area where that is advanced, I think, even faster than I imagined. Some of the things we're seeing with Unreal Studio and some of the other video generation tools and things like that are just, it's absolutely amazing. Mind-boggling how fast that stuff is moving forward, which, of course, that gets us into some of the things, that we and a lot of others, of course, have been warning about deep fakes and that sort of thing.
But it's how do you make it operational in a business so it's cost effective and it's justifiable and it's winnable?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we get, there's a whole lot of projects out there that just, clients will come to us and this is not winnable. Right. But if you can define it, there's an end goal, you know exactly what you're trying to accomplish. We can make that happen.
I think that we're going to see some standardization in data exchange between AI. So you'll be able more readily to have Copilot, for instance, turn something over to, let's say somewhere in Creative Suite and have the image creation happen there in Firefly, for instance. That type of thing where you'll be able to see some handoff rather than everyone trying to do everything. I think that we'll start to see some more maybe democratization of AI data, AI prompts. So that'll be that's my prediction for the next 24 months.
Pretty good. Write that down.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, we're gonna have to.
What stock is that? How do I invest in that vision?
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you two get back to your day. Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks, Danielle.